It all started as a whisper, an uneasy feeling creeping into my mind, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. For the past few months, my marriage had started to feel different, off, like a puzzle where all the pieces had suddenly changed shape, leaving gaps that no longer fit together. Lisa, my wife of 7 years, had always been predictable in the best way possible. She had her routines, her quirks, the way she'd leave half-drunk cups of coffee all over the house, or hum to herself while folding laundry. But lately, she had changed, drastically. At first, it was subtle. She started spending more time on her phone, always tilting the screen away from me when I walked into the room. Her laugh, once genuine and carefree, became forced, almost rehearsed. Our nightly conversations, once filled with jokes and shared dreams, had turned into short, impersonal exchanges. Then came the late nights. Lisa suddenly had meetings that stretched until well past midnight. Urgent business trips that she never used to have. She became obsessed with her appearance, standing in front of the mirror for an eternity before leaving the house, wearing perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. And yet, every time I asked, she had an excuse. "You're imagining things. Work has just been crazy. Why are you being so paranoid?" I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then, there was the moment that changed everything. One night, as she stood by the front door, dressed in a sleek, black dress, one that clung to her body in a way that made my stomach twist, I noticed something. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I watched her slip it into her purse as she grabbed her keys, her lips curling into a nervous smile. "I'll be home late," she said. And then she was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the closed door. Something was wrong, very wrong, and I was about to find out exactly what Lisa was hiding. Confronting Lisa outright was useless. I knew that much. She had mastered the art of dodging questions, turning my suspicions back on me, making me feel like the villain for even asking. But I wasn't crazy. I had seen the signs. The late-night disappearances. The hush phone calls. The way she'd pull away when I tried to hold her. And now, the missing wedding ring. I needed proof. So I came up with a plan. It was simple but effective. I would pretend to leave for work as usual, but instead of driving away, I'd stay behind and watch. That morning, my heart was pounding before I even got out of bed. Lying beside me, Lisa slept peacefully, her breathing slow and steady. She looked like the same woman I had married, the same woman who once swore she'd love me forever. But forever had started to feel temporary. I forced myself to go through my morning routine like nothing was wrong. Showered, got dressed, made my coffee, just like every other day. Lisa moved around the house with her usual ease, but there was something different in her energy. She seemed anxious, restless. As I grabbed my keys and walked toward the front door, she was standing by the kitchen counter, her phone clutched tightly in her hands. She barely looked up. "Have a good day," she murmured, almost distractedly. I leaned in and kissed her cheek, lingering just long enough to see if she would pull away. She did. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I felt it. A flicker of discomfort, a stiffness in her posture. I swallowed down the anger rising in my chest, forcing a casual smile as I stepped outside. I walked to my car, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway, just like any other morning. But instead of heading to work, I drove around the block. I parked a few houses away, my car hidden between two SUVs. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I turned off the engine, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. This was it. If I was wrong, if I had let paranoia take over, I'd have to live with the guilt of not trusting my wife. But if I was right, the thought made my stomach churn. Minutes passed. The house remained still, the curtains drawn. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, my hands slick with sweat. Then movement. The front door creaked open, and Lisa stepped outside. She wasn't dressed in her usual loungewear. No cozy sweater, no leggings. Instead, she wore a tight-fitting blouse, her jeans hugging her figure just right. She had even changed her hair, pulling it into a sleek ponytail, something she only did when she wanted to impress. She glanced up and down the street, checking for something or someone. Then, she pulled out her phone and started texting. Seconds later, she hurried back inside, leaving the door slightly ajar. And that's when the real waiting game began. Would she leave? Would someone come over? Who was she hiding from me? The answer was coming, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The air inside my car felt thick, suffocating. My fingers drummed restlessly against the steering wheel, my nerves stretched thin. Had I miscalculated? Was this just another dead end? Doubt began creeping in, whispering in my ear. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Lisa really had been telling the truth all along. Maybe work had just been stressful, and I was overthinking everything. But then, movement. Lisa appeared in the living room window, her silhouette outlined by the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. She pulled the blinds apart slightly and peeked out, scanning the street. My breath hitched. Then she did something that made my stomach twist into knots. She smiled. Not just any smile, one that was soft, almost giddy. A smile filled with anticipation. That was when I knew. She was expecting someone. I felt a cold rush of anger flood through me, my hands tightening into fists. My chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths as I watched her pace the living room, running her fingers through her hair nervously. She disappeared from view for a few moments, and when she returned, she had changed. Gone was the tight-fitting blouse and jeans. Instead, she wore a silky robe, one I had bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She never wore it for me. My vision blurred with rage. I gripped the door handle of my car, instinct screaming at me to storm inside, to demand answers, to catch her in the act before she could spin another lie. But I forced myself to stay put, because then, a black car pulled into the driveway. My heart stopped. The engine purred as it idled for a few seconds before the driver killed it. The tinted windows prevented me from seeing who was inside, but I could see Lisa's reaction clearly. She inhaled sharply, smoothed her hair, adjusted the robe slightly so that more of her shoulder was exposed. Then she stepped toward the front door. She was excited. She was waiting for him. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The car door opened, and a tall figure stepped out. I squinted, trying to make out details, but the early morning shadows played tricks on my eyes. Then, as the man stepped into the sunlight, I recognized him, and that's when everything shattered. The car door swung open, and out stepped a man, tall, well-dressed, exuding confidence like he owned the world. He wasn't fumbling with his jacket or hesitating on the sidewalk. No uncertainty, no nervous glances. He moved with the kind of ease that made my stomach twist into a knot. This wasn't his first time here. He had done this before. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My pulse pounded in my ears as I watched him stride up to my front door, like it belonged to him. Lisa was waiting. She must have heard the car, because before he could even knock, the door swung open. And then, her face. I barely recognized it. Her entire demeanor changed, lighting up with an excitement I hadn't seen in years. She was radiant. Her eyes sparkled, her smile wide and unguarded. She giggled, actually giggled, like a teenager on a first date. And then she touched him. A playful smack on the arm, the kind that says, "Stop, you're so bad," but really means I love this. I love you. It wasn't casual. It wasn't meaningless. I knew that touch. I had been the man on the receiving end of that once. A lifetime ago. And then, before I could process what the hell was happening, she grabbed his hand, and pulled him inside. The door shut. Just like that, I was locked out. My home, my marriage, my wife, on the other side of that door. I sat frozen, my breathing shallow, my hands trembling on the wheel. My mind raced through every possible explanation, every pathetic excuse I wanted to tell myself. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? Had I really been so blind? The betrayal felt like a knife twisting inside me, deep and relentless. But I wasn't going to sit there like a fool. No, I was going to find out exactly what was happening. And I wasn't leaving until I had answers. I couldn't just sit there. Not while my wife, my Lisa, was inside with another man, laughing, touching him, welcoming him into my home like it was his. No more waiting. No more doubts. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Adrenaline surged through me, sharpening my senses as I slowly reached for the door handle of my car. I exhaled, steadying my nerves, and stepped out, closing the door so gently that not even a whisper of sound escaped. I moved like a shadow. The street was eerily silent. No passing cars, no curious neighbors. Just me, the crisp morning air, and the distant sound of a dog barking a few houses down. As I crept toward the house, my pulse pounded in my ears. My mind was racing through every possible scenario. What I'd find inside, what I'd do when I saw it. Would I catch them in the act? Would I hear something that would break me? I swallowed hard and kept moving. I knew exactly how to get inside without them noticing. Lisa had always meant to fix the back door, a slight defect that kept it from locking properly unless you yanked it hard. I had told her weeks ago, we need to get this fixed. Now, I was glad she hadn't. I reached the side of the house, sticking close to the walls, careful not to let my shadow stretch across the windows. The curtains were mostly drawn, but here and there I could see slivers of light, movement. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to keep going. Reaching the back door, I took a slow, deep breath. This was it. I carefully wrapped my fingers around the handle, testing it. Loose, just like I remembered. With practiced ease, I applied the slightest pressure, pushing inward just enough to slip inside. The door barely made a sound as I stepped into the dimly lit hallway. I moved like a ghost. The faint scent of Lisa's perfume lingered in the air, a scent that used to drive me wild. Now it made my stomach turn. I listened. Voices. Muffled but close. I inched forward, my socks barely making a sound against the wooden floor. Every nerve in my body was on high alert, my heart hammering so hard I swore they could hear it. And then, as I turned the corner, I saw them, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard them. Laughter. Soft, intimate. The kind of laughter that didn't belong to strangers, but to two people who knew each other too well. Then whispering, low, secretive like a melody I was never meant to hear. I stopped dead in my tracks. My breath hitched. My entire body tensed. And then, kissing. Not just a peck, not just a casual brush of lips. Slow, deep, familiar. The kind of kiss that used to be mine. A rush of heat flooded my face, anger igniting deep in my chest like a match dropped onto gasoline. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. My grip on my phone tightened as I unlocked the screen with shaky fingers. I swiped to the voice recorder, my thumb hovering over the button for just a second before pressing it. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for every doubt Lisa had ever planted in my head. Every time she had gaslit me into believing I was just paranoid. I moved closer, carefully, silently, inching my way down the dim hallway toward the living room. My pulse pounded, my breathing shallow, my mind spiraling between rage and devastation. And then her voice, soft, sweet, the same voice that used to tell me she loved me. I've missed you so much. A strangled noise built in my throat, but I swallowed it down, forcing myself to stay quiet. And then his voice, calm, deep, confident. Me too, baby. 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 That word shattered something inside me. Lisa never called me that. Never. My vision blurred with fury, my hands curling into fists. I wanted to storm in, to rip him away from her, to demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I took another step forward, closer, just close enough to see them through the narrow opening between the doorway and the living room. And what I saw made my entire world collapse. I had heard enough. The whispered words, the stolen laughter, the intimacy that should have been mine, it was all too much. A storm of rage and betrayal surged inside me, drowning out reason, silencing every logical thought that told me to stay calm, to think this through. My body moved before my brain could catch up. With one swift motion, I stepped out of the shadows and into the living room. Lisa's back was to me, her hands gently resting on the man's chest. Their bodies were close, too close, their breath mingling in that sickeningly familiar way lovers share. The air between them was charged, electric. It made me sick. And then, my voice cut through the moment like a blade. Don't stop on my account. Cold, laced with fury. Lisa's reaction was instant. She screamed, a sharp, startled cry as she leaped backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table in her panic. Her face drained of color, eyes wide, lips parted in shock. The robe she had been wearing slipped slightly, revealing bare skin at her shoulder. She clutched it tighter around herself, as if that could erase what had just happened, as if she could undo what I had seen. The guy? He just froze, wide-eyed, stiff, like a deer caught in headlights. His mouth opened slightly, as if to say something, but no words came out. Coward. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, my fists clenched at my sides. My heart slammed against my ribs, my breath coming in sharp, controlled exhales. Who the hell is this? My voice was low, deadly, barely controlled. I didn't even look at the guy. My eyes were locked on her. Lisa, the woman I had loved, trusted, built a life with. She stammered, her lips moving soundlessly as she scrambled for an excuse, for some half-baked lie to throw in my face. But there was nothing she could say, because she had been caught, red-handed, and she knew it. Lisa's eyes darted back and forth between me and the man standing beside her, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. Then, as if on cue, she blurted out the most pathetic, overused excuse in the book. It's not what it looks like. I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Not what it looks like. My blood boiled at the audacity. I had just caught her wrapped in a robe, pressed up against another man in our home, whispering sweet nothings. And she had the nerve to deny reality? I didn't even dignify her words with a response. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. The room filled with their voices, her breathy whispers, his deep murmur, the unmistakable sounds of stolen intimacy. I've missed you so much. Me too, baby. Lisa gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth, as if she could physically shove the truth back in, as if she could undo what had already been done. The other man, the coward, turned rigid. His entire body stiffened like he had just been slapped in the face. And then he tried to leave, like I wasn't even there, like he could just walk past me, slip out the front door, and disappear. No, not happening. I stepped in front of him, blocking his path, my fists clenched at my sides. My body was taut, adrenaline surging through me like wildfire. Where do you think you're going? My voice was dangerously low. Controlled. Too controlled. The guy swallowed hard. He was tall, fit, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't built for this. He was a runner, not a fighter. Dude, I didn't know she was married, he stammered, raising his hand slightly like I had a gun to his chest. A blatant, gutless lie. I turned to Lisa, the betrayal burning in my veins like acid. Did he know Lisa? I asked, my voice sharp, precise. Or did you lie to him too? Her mouth opened, closed. No words came out, because there was no way out of this. No excuses left to give. No more lies to hide behind. Lisa's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Her whole body shook, hands covering her face as if she could somehow hide from the wreckage she had caused. It was just a mistake, she whimpered between ragged breaths. Please, I didn't mean for this to happen. I let out a slow, hollow exhale, shaking my head. A mistake? A mistake was forgetting an anniversary. A mistake was leaving the stove on or sending a text to the wrong person. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. A series of choices. Every text. Every whispered, I miss you. Every time she took off her wedding ring before walking out the door. She had chosen this, over and over again, and now she had to live with the consequences. The guy, the gutless coward, took that as his cue to get the hell out. He bolted toward the door, his face pale, his movements stiff and awkward. He didn't even spare Lisa a glance. Just another hit-and-run lover, slinking back into the shadows. Pathetic. Lisa reached for me then, her trembling fingers stretching across the space between us, desperate, pleading. Please, we can fix this. I love you. I stepped back. The sight of her, the sound of her, filled me with nothing but emptiness. I felt nothing for her anymore. Not love, not hate, not even anger. Just a cold, indifferent finality. I hope he was worth it, I said, my voice devoid of warmth. Her breath hitched. More tears, more desperation. But it didn't matter. I was already gone. I turned, walked to the door, and picked up the bag I had packed before I ever left the house. Because, deep down, I had already known how this would end. Lisa's betrayal wasn't something I needed time to process. I had seen enough, heard enough, felt enough. I was done. I didn't slam the door. I didn't throw one last angry glance over my shoulder. I just walked out, and for the first time in months, I felt free. Walking away that day wasn't easy. It should have been, after everything Lisa had done, every lie, every betrayal. It should have been the simplest decision of my life. But it wasn't, because leaving wasn't just about walking out of that house. It was about leaving behind 7 years of memories. 7 years of late-night talks, lazy Sunday mornings, whispered, I love yous in the dark. 7 years of inside jokes, shared dreams, and the belief that I had built something real. But in the end, it was all a lie. Lisa begged for another chance. She called, texted, showed up at my new place. She cried, pleaded, swore it was a mistake, that she'd do anything to fix it. But some betrayals can't be fixed, because betrayal isn't just about cheating. It's about trust. And once that trust is broken, there's no going back. So, I did the only thing left to do. I started over. I found a new apartment, a new routine, a new life. At first, the silence was the hardest part. No more waking up to the sound of Lisa humming in the kitchen. No more pointless arguments over what to watch on Netflix. No more familiar scent of her perfume lingering on my clothes. It was just me, alone. But then, something incredible happened. I started to feel free. No more second-guessing. No more checking her phone when she wasn't looking. No more drowning in suspicion every time she left the house. For the first time in years, I could breathe. And when I look back on everything that had happened, I realized something. Lisa hadde just hetet on me. She had set me free. Because in the end, I may have lost a wife, but I gained something far more valuable. The truth, my freedom, and the unshakable knowledge that I would never let someone treat me like that again. Have you ever caught someone cheating? How did you find out? Drop your stories in the comments. Let's talk about it. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away.